This is For the Governed, a podcast series brought to you by Athalonz. Here are your hosts, Tim Markison and Ron Cates.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Athalonz podcast. I'm Ron Cates. Joining me as always is Tim Markison, the CEO and founder of Athalonz. Today's topic is ball speed. There's more to be had. Is that true, Tim?
I believe so, yes. Yep. So
I have a question already.
Sure.
We haven't even started.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sure you have a lot of great ideas about how to get more ball speed, but how can you do that without compromising control?
That's kind of the holy grail for golf. How do you increase distance and maintain control? And the ultimate holy grail is increased distance and control. And I think both are possible the more we understand the physics part of golf and how it integrates with the physical movement of golf. So let me start with just the ball speed concept. So how far a ball travels is based on the speed that it leaves the tee or the club face, the angle at which it leaves the tee box or the tee, and then the spin of the ball. And the spin of the ball affects air resistance. So the lower the spin, the less air resistance, the further it'll travel.
And we're taking headwinds and tailwinds out of this for
for now.
A basic level.
Yeah. And then, if the ball is spinning directly this way, it's going to travel straight. If it spins this way, it's going to curve. It spins that way, it's going to curve the other way. And then launch angle is, just the angle actually off the ground. So from a pure physics standpoint, a projectile that's launched, you want it at an angle of 45 degrees. That angle will produce the furthest distance. In golf, however, the PGA players, when they're hitting a drive, their launch angle will be about 11 degrees instead of, so the maximum distance you can get for launch angle is 45, but the PGA players hit it about 11 to 12 degrees. And why that is, as you're coming in, the club is coming into the ball this way. So you're hitting through the ball, and then it's the angle of the club face with respect to the ball that gives you that launch angle. So you're not hitting up on the ball very much to get that launch angle. And why it's hit, relatively low and at that low angle is that's the best position for the body to be in at the point of contact. So
would 45 degrees be possible with like a really tall tee or something, or it's just not practical?
It's not practical with the way the club works with the body.
Okay.
Because you're looking at the maximum position for the body to be in at the point of contact, and you'd have to be on the upswing, and that now gets the hands away from the body, and the further the hands get and the arms get away from the body, the less solid that physical structure is.
So I think you've mentioned 4 contact points, 2 feet, 2 hands.
Yep. So let's, for the sake of just talking about ball speed, we'll assume that launch angle stays constant and spin stays constant. So how do we get more speed without compromising control? And to begin to look at that, as you mentioned, there's 2 contact points that the body has with the physical world. There's our feet with the ground, and then there's our hands with the club. So let's start talking about the feet to the ground. As we've talked about before, the body pushes on the ground pushes back. The ground pushing back is called ground reaction force. So the ground reaction force.
So a lot of people don't understand that ground pushing back because they think of somehow literally the ground is doing something. So can you elaborate on that?
The ground actually is doing something. It's just the earth is so much larger than we humans are that it doesn't move. So it seems like it's not doing anything, but it actually is exerting a force. And this dates back to Newton's laws of motions 300 plus years, and it's been proven, over that time to be, a scientific law in fact, which means it's always true. There are no known exceptions. So that's where we get the power to move, as the ground pushing back. And it's that ground reaction force that goes into our body that allows us to generate the power through our legs into our core and then transfer that to the clubs. So So part of the physics of it is looking at how does the energy transfer from the ground to the body through the shoe. And we've talked before here at Athalonz, that's what we've studied. And with our shoe, what we've done is we've shifted the ground reaction force. So there's more going towards the body than a conventional pair of golf shoes. So when we get more force going into the body uses that force to generate more energy, which equates to more power. So putting force, energy, and power into context. Force is the exertion that we apply. So that's coming from the ground. We push on the ground pushes back. That's our force. Energy is the movement of our body and the club over a distance. So that's energy, or work, as sometimes it's called. And then power is how fast we use that force over a distance in a period of time. So I can push, something that far at very slow, and I'm not exerting near as much power as if I do that. And think about a football lineman. If I'm pushing like this against the defensive player, I'm not exerting a lot of force. But if I do this into him, that's a lot of power into that player. It's the same thing with our golf swing. So
the speed of the golf swing matters a ton, obviously.
It matters. But where we get that speed is from the ground up into our body. So by shifting the ground reaction force more towards the body, we will increase the power available for the body, which will directly translate into more ball speed. The other thing that helps with more ground reaction force going towards the body is your body is going to be in a little bit more stable position at the point of, through the swing, at the point of contact and follow through. So now you can be a little more aggressive with your swing. We've seen players, get, anywhere from 3 to 10 miles an hour extra exit velocity just by switching their shoes, where they get more ground reaction.
Yeah, some of the top pros have said, I can swing out of my shoes now without swinging out of my shoes when they switch to Athalonz.
And that's because there's more ground reaction force going towards the body.
And I got to put this in here too. Currently, as we're taping this, the men's and women's long drive champions are wearing Athalonz.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. And adding on to that, we have over 50% of all long drive players that wear Athalonz shoes for that reason. And no golfer uses the ground better to create power than long drivers, because that's their whole game is power.
I remember Ryan Steinberg, one of the top long driver,
Yep.
Not the top, but pretty good long driver. Yep. He tried a test pair, basically, a prototype, won his next 2 tournaments, and then everybody on earth wanted to switch to these shoes.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite stories with just how this stuff works. And how interesting it is how people come across our paths and into our lives. But Ryan had been competing in long drive for 8 years. He was number 6 in the world, but had never won an event. And he borrowed our prototype shoes from Mitch McDowell and won that event. And then he won the next event. So 2 events in a row he won. And people asked Ryan, what did you do differently? He goes, literally, I just changed my shoes. And people were first at like, oh, that can't be true. But then the next player tried, and then the next player, and it worked. So Ryan bumped up to number 1 with our shoes, and then everybody started wearing them, and then he dropped back down a bit. So
I remember a really big World Long Drive tournament that he won. Yeah. Afterwards, he was running around screaming, "It's the shoes, baby!" Yeah. And we have that on video.
Yeah, that was a fun day.
That felt pretty good, right?
That was a fun day. Yeah. So the shoes definitely matter in improving ball speed without compromising control. And for most players, you're actually going to improve control because your lower half is going to be more stable. So the second way to increase ball speed is how your body connects to the club at the point of contact with the ball. So this is going to get a little physicsy here, but
I'll try to back you off if I have to, but Go ahead.
So the club hitting the ball puts the energy into the ball, and that makes the ball move. The equation for that in mathematics is called the conservation of momentum. So what that means, momentum is just mass times a change in velocity. So, for me, I'm running at a certain speed, and then I change my speed. I'm changing my momentum. So it's the same thing with the golf club and the body. So on the human side, it's the effective mass of the body and the club. So the more effective mass I can get into the swing, the more energy that's going to transfer into the ball.
That's exit velocity, right?
Yes. Yep. And they measure that. So it's the mass of the swing times the change in velocity of the swing. So at the point of contact, my club head is going to slow down a little bit. And it's that energy now that transfers into the ball. So it's going to be the mass of the ball times its velocity. So the more my effective mass is transferred into the ball, the further the ball will go. And then the other factor with the ball is what's called the coefficient of restitution. So that's basically a bounce back. So if I were to drop a ball from 3 feet and on a hard surface and it bounced back up exactly 3 feet, that would be a coefficient of restitution of 1. Well, there's no such thing.
That's impossible.
Yeah, to have that kind of energy. So, and then the USGA rules state that the coefficient of restitution for the club ball combination is 0.83. So what that means is if I drop a ball from 3 feet, it's 0.83 squared, or about 70%. So if I drop a ball from 3 feet, it's going to bounce back up to about 2.1 feet. So that's where, so you hear that players have, so they had a swing speed of 117, 118 miles an hour, and the exit velocity is 160, say. So that's why the exit velocity is greater than the club head speed because of the coefficient of restitution. So the ball is bouncing off the club and you're getting that bounce energy into the ball plus the momentum, or the velocity of the club.
So what are the practical implications of mass then?
Yeah. If you throw a ball against a brick wall, a golf ball, it's going to bounce back pretty hard. If I throw it against a mat, it's going to mainly drop right there. So that's kind of the difference between the effective mass. So the more I can get my body resembling a brick wall going through the swing to the point of contact, the more effective mass I'm going to have into that swing, and then the greater the ball speed is going to be. And if you look at the pro player swings, at the point of contact and into the approach of the swing, their elbow and their forearm or upper arm of their backside is locked into their hip and side. So they're creating a very solid physical structure. Think about punching. You look at a boxer, they don't swing with their arm out here. Even though I can get my hand to move faster if I'm here than I'm here, but I've got no mass behind this punch. But if I'm here and punching that way, there's going to be a lot more mass, a lot more impact, a lot more momentum transferred into what I'm hitting. It's the same thing with the golf swing.
What about like club weight and club stiffness?
So with respect to that, I'm a believer, and this needs to be studied more, but I'm a believer in, depending on the strength of the player, physical strength and size, the stronger the player, the more mass the player has, the more I think the heavier club they should use and the stiffer shaft that they should use. Because again, the heavier the club, the stiffer the shaft, the more my body in combination with the club represents a brick wall hitting the ball. Now, where the more flexible shafts come into play is for a weaker player who doesn't have that good, solid physical structure with the club. So the club head speed will change a lot more at the point of contact, and that will put more energy into the ball. But I would rather have more effective mass into the ball and less club head speed change.
It's interesting because there's a parallel in tennis. The top pro players use rackets that are way heavier than what average. You can't even buy the rackets they use. It might look like you're at the store buying the exact same racket, but their racket's going to be at least an ounce heavier, and typically they're also stiffer.
Yeah, because it's the effective mass into the swing. And you look at long drivers in golf, whether it's on the PGA or the long drive players. Now I'm 6 foot. I'm about 200 pounds, and when I at these long drive events, I'm tiny in compared to these long drive athletes.
They are monsters.
Yeah,
They're not normal humans.
Yep. And then I've done more study on the baseball momentum, and you look at the home run hitters in baseball, and they're all big, strong guys like 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260. And, why that is it's the effective mass, but the effective mass also gives the bigger player more margin of error to still hit a ball far. So the contact point for a smaller player, there's less margin of error to hit the ball far consistently. So, from a baseball standpoint, that's what makes Jose Altuve just so phenomenal, because he's 5'5" and 150 pounds, and yet he hits 25 homers a year. That means his contact point is so precise to get a ball to travel 420 feet versus somebody who's 6'5" and 220 or 240. They've just got more margin of error. And it's the same thing with the PGA players. Most of the big hitters are big, strong guys, but you look at like Ricky Fowler and a few others. They're not big men, and yet they can still hit the ball with the big boys. It's just that they do a really good job of getting their effective mass into the swing, and their point of contact is always so perfect that's why they hit the ball so well. Which again is why they make millions of dollars a year playing golf, and why the rest of us marvel at what they can do. It's an amazing athletic feat to put that kind of energy into a swing and always be within an eighth to a 16th of an inch of contact point with something that's 3 feet long hitting a ball on a spherical side. I mean, it's phenomenal.
That's the difference between them and us.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, I want to remind everybody, join Athalonz in preventing child abuse. We love the Joe Torre Safe at Home organization. You can find them at joetorre.org.